dinosaurs they may be, they're still great fun to watch. But it has to be said, those big, thirsty, immensely inefficient engines bequeath a terrible legacy on Southern California, a problem they've been grappling with over the past 20 years or more, the famous photochemical smog. Because the bright sunlight they get here all the year round acts on the exhaust that pours out of all these cars and turns it into a damaging cocktail of gases. Happens in cities all over the world, but more here than anywhere else. Makes the eyes sting, grabs you at the back of the throat, and it seems eats away at the lining of the lungs. It's estimated that 98% of Southern Californians are affected. Children are most at risk. They can suffer a 10 to 15% reduction in lung capacity for life. Postmortems on teenagers' lungs, for example, showed them to have all the signs of advanced middle age. Back in the 1960s, Californians were the first to instigate the use of catalytic converters and unleaded petrol to clean up car exhausts. The automotive industry squealed and said it couldn't be done, or that it would be too expensive. But California laid down a strict timetable for implementation. Now, of course, most of the industrialized world has followed suit. Today, 85% of the petrol sales in Southern California are unleaded, even though, unlike the UK, it's actually more expensive. The result is that conditions now are much better here. On some days, you can actually see the mountains. But last year, for example, on 230 days, the air here was more polluted than government standards allow. And on 75 days, children and old people were advised to stay indoors. Then, in 1984, one man, Mark Abramovich, took on the might of the administration. He sued the government's Environmental Protection Agency for not protecting Californians against their poisoned air, for not, that is, enforcing the law. After a 2-year battle, he won his case, and Southern California had to introduce a plan to clean up its air, to bring it into line with government standards over a 10 or 15-year period. The plan is comprehensive. It covers everything from power station chimneys to paint factories, even barbecue fuel. But the new laws governing cars go further than anyone thought possible. The immediate action is to eliminate all free parking, to have no more planning permissions for drive-ins, and to allocate special freeway lanes for shared or pooled vehicles. By 1993, all official bodies are to change from petrol or diesel engines to clean fuel. And by 1999, 40% of cars, 70% of trucks and all buses are to run on a clean fuel. The pooled cars idea has already caught on. In most areas, lanes on the freeway have been set aside for cars carrying 2 or more people. The incentive being, of course, that they can thus beat the jams. Companies employing 100 people or more have to reduce the number of car journeys their employees make to work. And the penalties for non-compliance are really quite severe.
We do have the authority to impose a $25,000 a day or a year in jail fine. Now, we hope we're not going to have to do that, but we have fined companies who haven't submitted a plan letting us know how they're going to reduce the number of vehicles driving to work at their site in the morning.
So are employers in California generally taking that regulation seriously?
I think so. We've seen some really good plans come up from companies around the basin. Incentives such as a 4-day work week, 10-hour day, flexible hours, or telecommuting, which is basically working at home. Anything to reduce the number of vehicles that they have coming into the workforce.
Well, as you might expect, those demands have really set their cut among the pigeons. There are those who argue they should be tougher and go further faster, while the car industry, for example, is already implying they can't be achieved. But things are really moving here. Edison, as you might expect, is making a big play for electric vehicles. They have to carry 36 batteries, can only do a 60-mile day on an 8-hour charge. They may, however, have their niche, but the biggest developments have been made with propane and methanol-powered vehicles. Orange County Transit, for example, have been using propane-propelled buses for 4 or 5 years now. They find lower maintenance costs, a better performance, and the fuel costs only half as much as diesel. Methanol is the other big front runner. It's easy to produce from natural gas and burns clean, and Ford and GM have supplied 5,000 experimental vehicles for use in LA. It has its problems. It's more expensive than petrol, requires bigger fuel tanks. Above all, it requires the oil companies to set up a nationwide distribution system. But George Bush has made it quite clear where he wants things to go. 500,000 flexible fueled cars able to use either petrol or methanol by 1995. There's even an idea for the state to buy up all the big old heavily polluting cars in one fell swoop and scrap the lot. But how do Californians in general feel about the plan?
There's widespread support for this plan. It did take pressure groups to mobilize that support, but the public has long made it clear that they want clean air.
But if it were to go to a referendum, for example, would it be voted in?
Yes, I believe that it would. Repeatedly, the public has listed air pollution control as one of the 3 top priorities, along with crime and drugs.
There are lots of Californians in positions of power who believe the cost is too great.
We don't believe that air quality is the only issue that has to be considered. We believe that it's one goal among many, and that you need a balanced approach towards solving the problems that we have in Southern California. And therefore, cost is a relevant consideration. We don't want to clean up the air at the expense of mass unemployment.
There is no doubt that what California is planning to do is genuinely a revolution, bringing to an end the 100-year domination of the petrol engine. No wonder some politicians and some big vested interests are squirming a bit. But the general view here seems to be the plan will go through, albeit with some modifications. There's strong support here for what they call technology forcing law. And if we look at our experience with catalytic converters and lead-free petrol, it seems clear that as changes take place here in the Golden State, eventually the rest of the world follows suit, and that, of course, means us.